Hope everybody's doing well. Today's little lecturette, if you want to call it that, has to do with culture and social behaviors. Again, all of these things that we've talked about over the weeks are high in magnitude as far as how you go about your day. Culture shapes how we think and behave and what we believe and how we define what's normal. Normal is a troublesome word. Normal is relative to the culture you live in. We've defined culture to the point where I think you probably got it memorized now, beliefs, values, etc. So let's jump right into the meat of this. We have to backtrack a little bit and look at a few things that you're probably intimately familiar with now. Symbols, key elements of culture, symbols, things that represent something else, like a flag or a wedding ring. Those alone may have no meaning, but when they're attached to your culture, they have a lot of meaning. Language, foundation of culture. We can communicate. Without language, you can't talk about the future or the past. You can only talk about what's right now or whatever, intimate it. Values and beliefs shaped by shared standards, right or wrong, good or bad, etc. Norms, the rules of expectations for behavior in a culture. Very, very different from culture to culture. And then material culture, physical objects, things that help define your culture, tools, clothing, art, buildings. Usually these things come about out of necessity related to, in some cases, climate, for example. So this is the framework for how your culture functions. Well, let's look at social behavior. Social behavior related to culture. It refers to how individuals interact with others. Pretty obvious, right? Social, yeah. In a social context. So not by yourself, but around other people. Everything from greeting someone, how you do that, observing traffic rules, participating in festivals and traditions. I had a friend, Rama, from India, and I ride motorcycles. I ride a Harley, and he rides a little. India builds a bike called a Royal Enfield. Really nice motorcycle. He goes home every year to visit his uncle. His family, actually, his mom and dad are here in America, but he goes over to visit extended family. And I asked him, when you go home, do you ride a motorcycle? He said, no. And I asked him why, and he said, because people from India don't respect motorcycles. They run over you. So it's just a cultural thing. I don't know if you've seen any of the videos of some of the cities in India where they have roundabouts and they go at their own pace. It's amazing that so many people survive that. I mentioned handshakes, bowing, traditionally in Japan. We'd shake hands here in America. They bow to one another, and they still do that. Older people still do that over there. So our social behaviors are heavily influenced by culture. What we consider rude or polite here may be acceptable or unacceptable, offensive, whatever, in a different culture. Let's look at some examples of cultural differences. And some of these I've just mentioned. In Japan, bowing is a standard greeting. In the U.S., a handshake is more common. In the Middle Eastern culture, a handshake between a man and a woman is in some cases unacceptable. In many Western cultures, individualism is valued. People are encouraged to be independent, in contrast to Asian, African, Latin American cultures, where collectivism is the key. And this is not news to you folk. We've already talked about a lot of this. Here's one we didn't mention, eye contact. making eye contact. There's a funny commercial out, by the way, right now. I don't know what it's for, but it's about eye contact. In the U.S., it's a sign of confidence and respect. In some cultures, making eye contact is rude. Avoiding eye contact is a sign of respect, particularly toward elders, where there's a lot more respect for elderly people than there is here. We have a bad way of dealing with our elderly folk. We put them in a home somewhere and forget them. Not everybody, but some people do that. Sociologists divide norms into two categories: folkways, and I might add a third one. Folkways, these are informal norms or customs. Breaking these is not going to cause you any serious problems, no serious consequences. Talking loudly in a library, like somebody might look at you and give you a dirty look, but it's not going to get you arrested. That's a folkway. You don't go to a restaurant and eat mashed potatoes with your hand. If you do, that's a folkway violation. I ate lunch with a fellow one time. He ate macaroni salad with his hand, and I was, well, I'm not too sure about this. I didn't have lunch with this guy anymore. He was a professional associate. And then the second category, named by sociology, is mores. They're also called moreways. Mores. These are moral norms. A violation of these can cause condemnation. It may not get you in trouble with the law, for example, but there can be serious consequences. Cheating on your wife, cheating on your husband, stealing, depending, that can get you in legal difficulties, but they're not really, depending on the level of it. It's not good, but it's a moral violation in some cases. And here's the break between soc and psychology. Folkways and mores, mores we call them. Moral norms that you violate. Being true to your wife, short of major legal problems. Getting a traffic ticket, that's kind of you speeding, that's a moral thing. But we have a third category in psychology we call taboos. Taboos are felonies. Taboos are serious. If you violate a taboo, then now you've abused a child or you've killed somebody or whatever. These are things that are absolutely unacceptable. Mores can be unacceptable, but usually we classify them at a lower level than a taboo. So this has to do with culture. Some cultures, murder is fine, believe it or not, in certain circumstances. You have to have an understanding of these to navigate through your cultural / normal social life successfully. How do we learn to do that? Socialization is the word. How we learn behavior. That's what socialization is. How do we learn cultural norms and behaviors? Through this socialization process. Where does it begin? Into birth, family. The first teachers of culture to you is your family. And then you graduate to peers. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm not bored. Peers. Friends that influence your begin to have an effect on your social skills and attitudes. You're learning. Your peers replace your parents as the most important entities at a certain age, usually beginning in school. And then here we go, school. School teaches discipline, hopefully, cooperation, civic values, civic rules, although I'm not too sure they're doing such a great job with that now. No offense to anyone. And in media, oh my gosh, it's kind of replaced everything really. Shapes your views, values, even expectations in life, We have influencers that many people fall victim to. Some of them are good. Some of them aren't so good. And then finally, religion. Moral guidance. Community standards. What it is that's acceptable and what it is that ain't in a social setting. It's something, socialization is something that continues throughout your life. It doesn't just stop at the end of childhood. And we have to look at it globally. Culture evolves. Culture changes. Globalization has changed culture. Why? Because we're coming into contact with people from the other side of the earth. So we have this thing called cultural diffusion. Cultural traits that spread to another culture. Westernization has encompassed probably the majority of the earth. We were influencers before influencing became a thing. Our styles, if you would look at youth, I'm going to pick on Japan a moment. I was in Japan back in the 60s on leave from Vietnam. You know that story. And I came in contact with old Japanese folk, very formal, even some wearing traditional clothing. And then I met the youth, and they're wearing Levi blue jeans. And they're trying to act like what has been depicted as American youth, probably in movies and things, rock and roll, etc. So this is a diffusion. And then we have hybrid cultures, cultural elements that mix. You pick something. There's a thing in Korea, for example, they make tacos now, a Korean version of a taco. It's pretty. I've never eaten one, but I'd like to try it. So you pick something. Hollywood musicals now that are, there's a word Bollywood. I'm not super familiar with it, but it has to do with Western influence on movies made in other countries. Can lead to conflict, cultural conflict. When values clash, you may have a problem. And then there's this thing called cultural homogenization, where local traditions are lost. I pick on Japan again. Maybe I should quit saying pick on. I'll use Japan as the example because I spent a lot of time there when I was away from Vietnam. There's a lot of homogenization there, everywhere actually now. Culture and identity, a biggie. Culture is central to your identity, shapes how you see yourself and how you see others, influences your language, food, traditions, beliefs. It's just influential in everything. You have to remember that individuals, though, are more than just products of their culture. People adapt, they resist, they reshape. Cultural norms are reshaped in creative ways. Give you a quick example and we'll be done. I came up through the time in America when the hippie movement, I don't even know if you know what a hippie is. I know you've probably heard the term, but if you didn't come up through that time, you really don't have a good working knowledge of it unless your parents have told you if they're older. The hippie movement was initially a peaceful demonstration against authority, against traditions. There was a saying, don't trust anybody over the age of 30. Hippies were not violent people. They just wanted to be left alone. They wanted to go smoke their little weed and live on a commune. And then it got messed up. People interjected their own versions of it, and then it just became a melting pot of a lot of things. But there were different facets. I mean, there were some hippies who'd never touched any kind of a drug. They just wanted to be free and live a peaceful life. So we have these kind of different cultural norms that come into play. We call them subcultures. Countercultures are dangerous. Those are gangs, etc. Subcultures are sometimes peaceful things. Hippies. Hippie was a spin-off of a movement called the Beatniks out of the 50s. So ask me sometime, tell you all about it. I've been around a while. So that's basically what we're talking about with this social stuff. And I love it. I love socialization stuff. Why does it matter? Well, you need to be able to understand this social stuff in order to communicate across differences. You need to be also able to reduce stereotypes, get rid of those. Don't stereotype things. And rid yourself of prejudice. I'm not giving you a moral sermon here. I'm just saying that these are some of the things that are affected by this. You can work more effectively in diverse environments. When you guys graduate, you're going to be out there in a lot of diversity. You already are. So I'm sure you're aware of it. You're going to have to be able to work with people who aren't like you. And then you need to adapt. The world is getting smaller quickly because of technology. So we're going to have to adapt and get along with each other. That's pie in the sky, but maybe it'll work one day. Okay, so I hope you learned something here. See you shortly.